So I'm here to talk about the challenges that the Spanish startups and Austin startups in general face, in the hopes that we can open a discussion of how to overcome them. Let's start with just the facts. As of last week, a sad milestone Spain hit. Unemployment has continued to skyrocket to the number that 27% of Spain is officially imparado or unemployed. 60% of Spain's 30 and under are jobless. 44% of the 30 and under who are employed are working for jobs that they're officially overqualified for. This is leading to a serious and impending brain drain on the Spanish economy and culture as youth look abroad more and more. In fact, last year, 70% of Spain's youth said they'd consider moving abroad. And last year, the National Statistics Institute of Spain revealed that twice as many of Spain's youth are currently emigrating than were in 2010. So this all asks one question. With nothing left to lose, why aren't Spain's youth starting their own companies? They don't have family, they don't have mortgages. Why aren't the Spanish youth encouraged to do this? So with this, we begin with the topic that why TalentiaTech approached me about having this webinar in the first place. A couple months ago, I published what has become by far my most popular article to date, which is kind of sad since it's one of the only few negative articles I've done in a huge pool of articles about the wonders of entrepreneurship and business in Spain. While the article was written out of sheer frustration, the 100+ Spanish entrepreneurs I've privileged to talk with are super inspiring, but they also repeat the same mantra time and again of the challenges that entrepreneurs face in Spain. So I wrote an article about why the Spanish aren't entrepreneurs, discussing the many cultural, educational, and legal barriers to starting your own business in the country I love to live in. TalentiaTech asked me to stir the pot further, as they say, by pulling together a talk on the topic. As we look to discuss the entrepreneurial movement in Spain, we must first discuss why it's so slow to move. So, why aren't the Spanish entrepreneurs? Because it's absurdly difficult to be. Let's start first with the pink elephant that's was missing from my already long article. The laws and taxes that are in place strangle most companies before they can even come up for air. I'm going to start by quoting some comments on my article. People told me that the article was good, but missing the huge white elephant in the room, the government. It is actively penalized by tax and bureaucracy systems to be an entrepreneur or self-employed in Spain. And as you know, the startup costs are huge compared to other countries. Therefore, most budding businesses are strangled even before birth because the initial setup costs too much in both time and money. Education is prescriptive too, of course, with rote learning and little application of knowledge to solve problems, but it is not the whole story. The restrictions to growth are huge. Someone else said, every step in the startup process is slowed down and made more expensive due to excessive controls and bureaucracy. It is impossible to raise money for the business since before starting, you already have to pay the government and have to start paying taxes before you make any money whatsoever, and a huge series of difficulties. So the biggest barrier seems to be that the bureaucracy is expensive and it takes forever. It's nearly impossible to start your own business. There's no flexibility. Most of us have day jobs that we cannot afford to quit our day jobs in order to pursue our dreams. We need to hustle on our downtime on nights and weekends to get things done if we want to start our own business. The Spanish are completely limited in their job status options. You can either have a full-time job or an autónomo, which is Spanish for freelance, but not both. I know a graphic designer who does freelance work outside of her day jobs on her nights and weekends, but can only bill everybody 1 month a year when she bureaucratically steps down from her 9-to-7 job and goes officially on quote-unquote vacation for a month so she can bill her clients. That means that she can take up to 14 months to get paid back by her clients. Beyond that, the restrictions to growth are impressive, including expensive and complicated patent laws. Beyond everything else, the wait time for the bureaucratic process is so slow and frustrating to see everything done. And before anything else, part of the struggle is that from the get-go, you have to pay taxes. One commenter wrote, the current cost of Social Security benefits payments plus various other costs are strong disincentives to starting up your own business, even with the recent changes rebates for the under 30s. You start by paying between 260 to 300 euros a month. This means you're paying taxes whether or not your company has started earning money or not. It's very rare for any sort of new business to make a profit within the first year, when just breaking even is considered somewhat of a success. So as another commenter talks about, it's expensive both to start a business and to try to expand it or to hire staff. A company has to prepay part of their taxes for the years to come based on previous year's turnover. Hiring an individual temporarily comes with so many constraints that most companies that try to avoid it at all costs. If someone works with you for a year, the contract becomes indefinite. When waiting to cancel the contract, guess what? Severance pay, and the big one. So there are a lot of restrictions that make people not want to do it. I actually advocate on the behalf of how America does it, which is you just pay taxes for the money you earn. I have a full-time job and freelance positions that I pay taxes on, and it makes it a lot easier. So you are more liable to start your own company because you know you have your day job to fall back on. I think it's a great idea that Spain should start on. As another commenter on the SmartPlanet article said, there's a certain kind of cultural barrier that makes it difficult for us to get out of Spain to make a business. It's also a language barrier, but not only. We've been for generations relying on the domestic market, and now it is difficult for Spanish companies to grow with this limitation. Things are changing now, but it will probably take time. There's no doubt there are some cultural barriers to a full-on entrepreneurial movement here. For those that have jobs, they're repeatedly told to cling to them, whether they want to or not. Having a job is now seen as a gift that you can't counter your boss. With 27% unemployment, this culture of fear and subordination has grown. More and more, bosses are saying there's a line out the door of people waiting to take your job. This means that we're pushing more and more for the Spanish culture to seem anti-entrepreneurial. A great entrepreneurist who helps guide the employed and unemployed, and as a friend of mine recently told me, un emprendedor es un bicho raro. In Spain, an entrepreneur is a freak or an oddball. There's no need to like what you do. You just need to have a job. There's no learn from your mistakes, Silicon Valley culture of if you fail, try again, or learning from your mistakes. If you fail, you get branded with an X and you never try again. When I met Enrique Semper, founder of NIM Genetics, and at a startup pitch conference last year, he told me there's something in Spain that's risk adverse. We're not used to debating, having open discussions in general. This is all flips in the entrepreneurial community. A common theme on Spanish business blogs is that Spanish society doesn't necessarily understand people that work for startups. This is a country that favors stability over potential gain. Startup founder Lucas Carnet of Privalia recently said in an interview, "We live in an increasingly changing world. People have to get used to change as a natural condition, and to cope with a condition, you have to be an entrepreneur." As a consequence of some of the former points, an entrepreneur will be surrounded in Spain by naysayers, trying to get him to forget about his dreams. Both family and friends, colleagues, authorities, everybody will tell the entrepreneur that his plan will never work. Further struggling against small businesses is that in the middle or lower classes, taking out loans is seen as a bad thing. In America, going bankrupt is a rite of passage. Look at Donald Trump. In the same vein, getting a loan for a new business in many parts of Europe is really quite difficult. Next, the Spanish small business owner notoriously looks too small. Starting small is good if you're looking to scale your business, but many aren't. While 5% of the Spanish population are small business owners, less than half of these independent companies has more than 2 employees. So most of them are freelancers. Only a mere 10%, or 5 out of every 1,000 small businesses in Spain has 10 or more employees. This goes to show how many of the Spanish do share a desire with most cultures to be their own bosses, but it stops there. There are, of course, freelancers, particularly in the architectural industry and others impossibly hit by the crisis, who, following their 2 years of government-funded unemployment, try to outsource themselves to any job they can get. And there are definitely shopkeepers. But the majority of these people aren't Zara's Armante Ortega, but rather they usually only open just one shop or bar as part of creating a legacy to pass down to their children. They rarely think of opening an online store, which is a much lower risk investment, and they don't consider what their children want to do anyway. Especially with a lack of consumption in their own country, increasing e-commerce is a way to expand business despite crisis. And to compound it all, the Spanish are known for Well, having a low level of English in the EU, the lowest level, and they're not looking to expand as much outside Latin America, where there needs to be more help. Finally, and this is a big problem that Jose will talk about more, but Spain isn't exactly a land of dreamers. I can't stress enough that in Spain, there's no need to like your job. This is not a country that raises their children to dream about what they want to be when they grow up. Parents want their kids to focus on education, exams, not practical internships and things until after graduation. To quote my entrepreneurial Catalan friend again, it seems that you only look to start a company when it's the last thing that's left to try. She says that she has students that after a year or two unemployed, now they want to open a business, but it's the last option. In fact, an ESADE white paper on entrepreneurship in Spain states that 4 out of 10 entrepreneurs act out of necessity, which isn't exactly the sort of thing venture capitalists and business angels are looking for, right? Part of the problem is that entrepreneurial values aren't instilled in school. Upon graduation, 70% of Spanish people want to work in companies, while 70% of American graduates want to be their own bosses. And then there's the Spanish obsession with oposiciones, or civil servant jobs for life. While the numbers may vary, it's somewhere between 50 and 75% of uni graduates last year said they wanted to at least try to take an opposition exam to be a civil servant. I know one person who spent 3 years studying 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for one of 2 positions with one of the Spanish ministries. She had the 3rd highest score of 600 test takers. There were only 2 positions. So what did she do with that life, that time? So as one person I met at a networking event said, and I agree with, you're 23 years old with your whole life ahead of you, and all you can do is dream of being a public servant. It's a little sad and lack of creative. There's also a certain lack of role models in Spain. We certainly know you can't look to the politicians or royals for examples anymore here. And Iker Casillas is a great leader in person, but we need role models outside the sports arena and inside the business one too. Yes, Zara's founder, Amancio Ortega, sometimes known as the 3rd richest man in the world, is a great example of Spanish entrepreneurship. But I don't think he's really going to be relatable at 77 with a 22-year-old university graduate. Also, Ortega isn't like Bill Gates or Richard Branson. He's not spending his free time and money investing in inspiring Spain's youth, which that's his choice. But I say Spain needs to start highlighting its next generation, like Javier Aguera, who started Geeksphone when he was 16. Geeksphone just released last month Mozilla Firefox's first phone. This is a hugely impressive 21-year-old whose name you should probably have never heard of, so keep him in mind. But role models or not, I believe a renaissance of entrepreneurs in Spain is certainly starting. The other 3 panelists will elaborate more on many of these public and private organizations, but just to name a few, Telefónica's Wayra, Mercadona's partnership with University of Valencia, AS 2.0, which works specifically with women in tech world. I just talked to Unreasonable at Sea last week, who finished in Barcelona and have 2 amazing companies that are Spanish. One called the IOU Project, which makes sure you know your clothes are being made in fair conditions, respecting the whole supply chain process, and Aqua Inc., which actually is kind of saving the world because it uses plants to purify water in countries that don't have potable or proper drinking water. There's a lot of tech-based organizations, but there's also amazing ones like José Manuel will talk about, Iniciador, or Fundación Create, which are both focused on teaching entrepreneurial values when they matter most. The younger, the better. There are so many different things, and the list goes on and on. So I ask the hopefully more obvious question, if you can get past the bureaucracy, why aren't more people building a business or expanding their business into Spain? The warmth of the people and the climate are reason enough to think about it. Why are companies only considered a success if they have locations in dreary London or all the way in Silicon Valley? Spain is beautiful and ripe for the picking. Someone once told me recently that Spain is hungry and ripe for the renaissance of entrepreneurs, which I kind of stole for the name of this event. Or, citing the reasoning of another, if the Spanish economy will be saved, it will be saved by emprendedores, entrepreneurs, not the government. So the moment is now. And not to quote Whitney Houston, God rest her soul, too much, but the children are our future. So this is how we have to do it. Like women in science, I firmly believe entrepreneurial values start at a young age. Creativity, different ideologies of entrepreneurs are things that we take for granted in the U.S. In the U.S., we have debates, we have lemonade stands, we have lawn mowing and babysitting. Kids here aren't asked enough, what do you want to be when you grow up? They aren't asked to do entrepreneurial things as a kid. But as the white paper on entrepreneurship in Spain by Esade Business School said, entrepreneurship can be learned at school and should be actively promoted so that young Spaniards can develop skills such as independence, self-confidence, and decision-making in situations of risk.